Alright, back again, Luke here, and today what I wanted to do is show you guys how to do a complete overhaul on your PC Engine GTs or Turbo Expresses. I had a lot of people asking questions on how I repaired these things, and although I put up a couple of videos on my repairs of one of the earlier ones that I had gotten, I figured I'd show you guys how to do a complete overhaul on this. And what I mean by that is if you ever get a PC Engine GT that doesn't start up, it has absolutely no power going to it, or the monitor itself is kind of black and dark, or the inside sound doesn't work, this is one way to get all three of those things up and running. So the first thing that you're going to need a Phillips screwdriver, a very small one, fine tip one. And if you turn the back over here, you can see there are some screw holes. There are two up at the top here, there are two in the middle, and there are two in the bottom here underneath the batteries. There's a silver one there and there's another one there. So let's take these screws out here and take a look at the inside. Normally you can put these screws inside a small tin or something to keep track of them, because sometimes they can wind up come up missing if you just let them fall on the floor. But unfortunately for this video here, I'm just going to try and do this as quickly as possible to show you guys where to replace the capacitors and what it looks like on the inside here, so you can get an idea. But when you go to do this yourself, I recommend putting these screws in a special spot where you don't lose them. Definitely doing this on carpet is probably not the best idea, because these screws can definitely get stuck inside the carpet and you find yourself looking around for screws that you don't know where they went. But once you get those screws out, the top cover should come off reasonably easy, but you want to make sure that you don't pull too hard. The main reason for that is because there's two ribbon cables, and there's also another cable connected here for the back illumination light. So what we're going to do here is we're going to disconnect this one. That's for our illumination. We're going to disconnect this ribbon cable here, and that's for the D-pad and for the buttons. And then we're going to disconnect this one here. This is for the monitor. One thing to keep in mind is when you go to repair these PC Engine GTs or the Turbo Expresses, if you don't have all of these ribbons plugged back in, when you go to turn the power on, you won't get any picture. Now, for example, if you just plug in this one and you plug in the monitor itself, you won't get any video. You also have to plug in the D-pad. It sounds really strange, but if you don't have this wire plugged in, you won't get any video signal. So make sure when you put this back together, or for testing purposes, that you plug in all three of these ribbon cables, or these two ribbon cables and this cable over here, or else you won't get any video. So now that we have the top part detached here, I'm going to put that aside, and you can get a better look at the circuit board here. Now, you'll see there's one more ribbon cable over here, and that is for the link. So you can link the unit and play two players or head-to-head. We're going to disconnect that. And normally, this is something that I had already taken apart once before, but underneath this black tape here is where these two wires will be. So you can just lift up the tape on the back here, and you can remove the wires from behind there, or you can, rip it, or anything. As long as you're going to reuse the tape, or if you feel like reusing the tape, then you can just put a new piece of tape over the top of that. It's not super necessary, it just keeps the wires in there nice and neat. But we're going to disconnect this. This is for the power in the back of the unit. And up at the top here, there's one screw, and that's right here. So we're going to remove that one. As long as we don't drop our screwdriver here. Now this is one that I've already repaired here, so you'll see some repairs already done to it, but I'll show you where the different parts are located for it. So once we get all those removed, get the screws removed and the ribbon cables, what we're going to do is we're going to gently lift up on this circuit board here, and we're going to flip it backwards. We don't want to rip this ribbon cable over here. Well, we're going to flip it backwards like so. And now you can see there's some capacitors here that I've already replaced. There's a couple of parts where I had to try and get in there with my soldering pen and I wasn't able to, but these capacitors over here, which are located in the stereo part, or by the earphones, these are all 6 volt 100 microfarad capacitors. There's 3 of them here. This one is a little bit larger, and that's a 16 volt 100 microfarad capacitor, But I've replaced all of these here with 25 volts, or one 16 volt, and the others are 25 volt, 100 microfarads. And as I had mentioned in another video, as long as you have the same microfarad rating and at least the same amount of voltage, if not higher, you can replace these capacitors with anything of a higher voltage rating but the same microfarads. So, like I said, these were originally 6 volt, 100 microfarads. I've replaced this one and this one with 16 volt, 100 microfarad, and this one here is 25 volt, 100 microfarad. So all of these are well above the limit that they should have. These here are all going to be part of your sound. Now, there are two other ones that I haven't replaced yet, and the main reason why is because some of these capacitors are really big, and it's really hard to get into this small place here. But there are two 6 volt 33 microfarad capacitors, and these should normally also be replaced if you're trying to fix the sound problem. The main reason why the sound goes out is these capacitors in here, they leak over time, and these two here are also a big problem with the sound. So after replacing these capacitors here, if you find that your sound is still low and it's not as loud as you'd like, if you replace these two here, you will get extremely loud sound. The only reason why I haven't replaced these ones here so far is because I don't have a 33 microfarad rating capacitor right now. So I've left these two alone. If you do replace these and you use these size capacitors, you might have to do some snaking around. You might have to use some wires to move the capacitors over here or to move the capacitors down here, because probably trying to fit everything in this small space is going to be really difficult. But when you do this, try and make sure that you don't rip any of the traces on the board, which happens quite often. Try and get a really nice fine tip soldering pen, if you can find one. I didn't have a really fine tip one, so I actually wound up burning this one just a little bit, the plastic on this. But if you find a fine tip one, then slowly work the corners of these capacitors and get them out. You can try and twist them out, but you must be very, very careful when you do that, or shake them back and forth with a pair of pliers, which also does work. Just make sure you don't pull too hard, because if you do, you'll rip the trace off, and then you'll wind up getting no sound at all. So that is the sound section of the board. Underneath here, this is going to be really hard to see, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to bend one of these capacitors up so you can see a little bit better. Underneath this power switch here, you're going to see it's a 1 amp fuse, and this is this black long rectangular fuse here. If your PC Engine doesn't turn on at all, you get absolutely no power, it's probably because this fuse is blown. Now, you can do this one of two ways. In my other videos I've already mentioned this as well. You can do this the correct way, or you can do it the poor man's way. The correct way would be to go out and pick up another 1 amp fuse and replace this, or get one that you can fit in here that maybe can fit inside a casing, so easily removable. And the other way to do this, the really poor man's way to do this, is to run a jumper wire from this point to this point. Now, although this will give you the power back inside the unit, it basically gives you no other chance if you have something go wrong. Instead of popping the fuse, it's going to pop something else on the board, so do that at your own risk. So this is the sound section of the board. This is going to be your power for the board itself. So if it doesn't turn on or off, this is the problem here. And then up here in the upper left hand corner, there will be a small, another small capacitor up here in the corner. As you can see here, I've kind of been able to work this one in here. This is a little bit bigger than the one that's normally in there. So it's really important when you put this thing in that you put it in on an angle, or you put it in a way to where it's not going to get in any contact with this surface here, because this is, when you put it back together, this area here is cut out, and the plastic actually comes through here. So if this thing leans over too much on this way, you'll wind up ripping it out. You got to try and wedge this thing in there as best as you can. And I believe the capacitor in here may be 30 volts, but it's 4.7 microfarads, so this is another difficult one to try and find. What I've put in here, this is a 50 volt 4.7 microfarad resistor, so once again it's over the rating limit, so it'll be perfect when you put it back together. And like I said, when you try and take these capacitors off, I'm going to make sure that you don't rip the traces on the sides here, because it can be a real pain to put them back together. And with this one in particular, you want to try and get it down as far as you can, but without coming into this area here, without making any contact. If it does make any contact with this part here, when you go to put it back together, sometimes it'll rip the capacitor off, and it'll sometimes rip the traces. But this here is your video capacitor. It's a very small one when it's originally on there. It looks very similar to this one here, but this one is a 22 microfarad 6 volt. This is the 4.7 microfarad one, so make sure you replace that with a 4.7 microfarad resistor or capacitor, and you'll be all set. So like I said, I've already done the repairs to this one, but I wanted to give a little bit more of an explanation on how I did it here, since a lot of people had asked about it. When you go to put this thing back together, like I said, be very careful, because of this section here. This is the part that's raised up plastic, and I don't know if you can see in there, that's the capacitor that I replaced. And it is very, very close. It still fits in there nicely, but it's very close, and if the sound capacitors are sticking up too far as well, what you'll wind up getting is you'll have this board raised up too far, and when you try and put it back together, if you put pressure on it, you can also break off those capacitors on the inside as well, or you break the contact points. So always make sure that when you put these things back together, and you put these capacitors on there, try and get them down as close as you can. You know, try and put them down as flat as you can. And hopefully they won't go any higher than the switch here, and you should be all set. But we'll put this thing back together as so. Those are the three main sections that you need to look out for with this these PC Engine GTs or these Turbo Expresses. Any other capacitors that you replace, they'll definitely be a good idea to replace them if you just want to have everything new, but those are the main capacitors that cause either the machine not to come on, or the machine to have bad or no video, or low or no sound. So put this back down here, just kind of add this just to keep the wires out of the way. And when you go to put this thing back together, also make sure that you put your ribbon cables back in. Try not to forget anything. This ribbon cable here is sometimes easily forgotten, but try not to forget any of these ribbon cables. It's not a big deal if you do forget it. You can always open it back up and put it back in, but you really don't want to go through all that trouble a second time. So now that we got that in there, when we go to put the top back on, I'm going to plug in the monitor ribbon cable first, since it's the longest, and hopefully that'll go in there nicely. It's kind of hard here doing this on an angle. Okay, that one's in there. Then we're going to plug in the one for our D-pad, which is in there nicely, and then finally we'll do the one for our illumination. And we're also going to make sure that we put this switch back in, because this is also something that generally gets forgotten easily, but it's quite easy. Just pop it in just right there, and hopefully when you get everything put back together, your unit should go back together somewhat easily. If it's a little bit difficult to put back together, for example, the top part here feels a little tight and it doesn't want to go in, if you try and force it down, what you're probably going to do is rip out one of the capacitors. What it means basically is that the capacitors in either the stereo section or the video section are a bit too high, so it's not going to sit flat. But put these back in, and if you want to test this as you go along, that's not a bad idea at all. Definitely, you know, get a couple of screws in here, and then check to see if your monitor's working again, and if your sound is working again. If when you go to turn this on, if you realize that the sound is not working, then you probably broke loose one of the capacitors. And if your video is still dark and black, it probably means that you wound up breaking that capacitor off for the video, which is in the top part here. But if everything goes well, when you put your game in and go to test it out, hopefully you should have a working unit. So just thought I'd share this with you guys here. I know that sometimes these repair videos can be a little bit difficult to understand and sometimes a little bit long, but hopefully if this helps out anyone, then that's great. Those are just the key things that I figured out by repairing several of these units before, and I thought I'd share that with you guys after having a lot of requests on how to replace these things and how to repair them. So that's about all for me for right now. Like always, I'll put up another video here soon, so thanks for watching. And someone had asked me if by putting those capacitors in, if it changes the sound, and if if the sound in these units was actually that loud, and it is. When you replace those capacitors, the sound on these units is just ridiculously loud. I still haven't replaced those two capacitors that are left, but still, nonetheless, the sound is extremely loud, and you'll notice a huge difference when you go to turn this thing on again. It'll sound like you just bought it, and the screen itself will look just like brand new. But yeah, once again, hopefully that helps you guys out, and if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know. So once again, I'll try and put up another video here soon, so thanks for watching.